This episode is brought to you by Glorify, the #1 Christian daily devotional app. Everything around us changes. God doesn't. That's why I love Glorify's 21-day challenge. It helps me build a simple habit of meeting with God every day. No pressure, just consistency. With Glorify, you can start your morning by reading the Bible passage of the day, diving into Glorify's daily devotional, and wrapping up with an immersive experience called Daily Walk with God. And if you need to take a few minutes to yourself in the middle of a busy day, try one of Glorify's guided meditations, or listen to their curated worship playlists for some quiet reflection. To end the day, enjoy Glorify's sleep meditations to help you wind down and put your mind and heart at ease. Whether you're a committed Christian or simply curious about faith, Glorify has something for you. Join over 20 million people who have downloaded the Glorify app and deepened their relationship with God. Listeners to the show can get full access to Glorify for just $29.99 for the entire year. That's Glorify's lowest price ever when you download the Glorify app now at glorify-app.com/redcircle. Feel closer to God this year with Glorify. Get full access all year for just $29.99 at glorify-app.com/redcircle. That's glorify-app.com/redcircle.
All right, well, if you liked this past week's message, I don't know how you couldn't. If you need more from this past week's message, Knocking Through the No, I brought the pastor back so that we could have week 2 of Run It Back.
Walk it out.
Let's go. Here you go. All right, babe, we have to talk about this sermon, Knocking Through the No. This was one of those sermons that for me, I did not fully understand it until I went back and I looked at my notes and I was like, holy cow, there was like so much depth to just even the handle of the door. Because you start off with this, you take us to Revelation 3:20, which is like classic ask Jesus into your heart verse. You know, the verse where it says, here I am, I stand at the door and knock. And I mean, that was what it was for me because I grew up in church. And to me, that's what that verse meant was, will you let Jesus into your life? And you give us this title, Knocking Through the No. And I'm thinking that it's like me being persistent. And by the end of the message, I was like, oh, it's God knocking through my no. Mm-hmm. And how you took this Revelation 3:20 and you took us to 2 Kings and the Shunammite woman, which is one of my favorite stories in the Bible. And so like, let me just start off like, how did you arrive at even just the title? How much of the door references did you have as you were building this sermon?
Well, it touched my heart because the woman basically has done something amazing for God's prophet. She doesn't want anything in return.
Right.
And he calls her and says something to her that touches such a tender place in her heart. And she's standing there listening to him prophesy that she's going to have a baby.
Right.
And I was drawn to the phrase, about this time next year.
Right.
He tells her, about this time next year. This is 2 Kings 4:16.
Because what a brilliant thing to talk about at the beginning of the year.
Well, we're thinking about that in the new year. And I'm thinking about all the people who are thinking about this time last year.
Right.
Things that they said they were going to do or wanted to see. And maybe some of them have come to pass or maybe some of them haven't. But we're all kind of thinking like a demarcation line in our life.
Yeah.
This is where I want to be this time next year. All right. And even if we're not thinking that way, that phrase got my attention.
Yeah.
But then when I read where the woman in verse 15 was standing in the doorway and the prophet says, about this time next year, you will hold a son in your arms. I'm like, that's the picture of faith, is standing in the doorway. And then I realized that the doorway she was standing in wasn't even there until she built a room for the prophet. So the whole thing to me became this domino effect of something that the woman did just because she wanted to do something for God and for the prophet.
Yes.
And then something that God wanted to do for her. But the most striking thing is, as she's standing in the doorway, which could be a picture of you trying to decide whether to go forward into a new habit or to go forward into a new journey or to go forward into a new step of faith that God has called you, or to go back or to stay where you are, right? This doorway image, we all can relate to like, and You know, the amazing thing is that she refuses to receive what he's speaking to her.
Right.
She says, no.
She's like, no.
No, don't say that.
Yeah.
Well, first she says, I'm good, I don't need anything. And then he says, about this time next year, you're going to hold a son in your arms. And she goes, don't mislead me.
Yeah.
In other words, don't get my hopes up.
Right.
I don't even want to think about it.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people who feel that way about certain areas in their life. I don't even want to think about being free because it just brings up the pain of the fact of the bondage or the addiction that much more.
Yes.
I don't even want to think about having a healthy relationship in my life where someone loves me because it brings up all of the times that I thought I had that and I didn't. And so the fact that she says no, she literally says no.
Right.
No, please, my Lord, don't mislead me. And then still has a baby. How it didn't stop God's promise in her life.
Right. I loved how you said that. You said she didn't have, there's nowhere in the scripture where it says she had the faith for the baby.
Yeah. And you see the same thing almost with Abraham and Sarah, where they believed God, but there was never a moment that you saw where they perfectly accepted and received what God spoke.
This is what I wrote in my notes. I said,
This episode is brought to you by Glorify, the #1 Christian daily devotional app. Everything around us changes. God doesn't. That's why I love Glorify's 21-day challenge. It helps me build a simple habit of meeting with God every day. No pressure, just consistency. With Glorify, you can start your morning by reading the Bible passage of the day, diving into Glorify's daily devotional, and wrapping up with an immersive experience called Daily Walk with God. And if you need to take a few minutes to yourself in the middle of a busy day, try one of Glorify's guided meditations, or listen to their curated worship playlists for some quiet reflection. To end the day, enjoy Glorify's sleep meditations to help you wind down and put your mind and heart at ease. Whether you're a committed Christian or simply curious about faith, Glorify has something for you. Join over 20 million people who have downloaded the Glorify app and deepened their relationship with God. Listeners to the show can get full access to Glorify for just $29.99 for the entire year. That's Glorify's lowest price ever when you download the Glorify app now at glorify-app.com/redcircle. Feel closer to God this year with Glorify. Get full access all year for just $29.99 at glorify-app.com/redcircle. That's glorify-app.com/redcircle.
What is that?
Yeah, it's a World Cup holder.
Like the soccer tournament World Cup?
Holder. For the world. Fits every car, holds every cup.
It has a Carvana logo?
Carvana made it. They buy and sell cars, so they made a car cup holder. So, got any good cups lately?
I used to, just couldn't figure out where in the world to put them.
The World Cup holder, brought to you by Carvana, proud sponsors of the World Cup holder.
Sign up today to win yours at cup-holder2026.com. Not authorized or endorsed by FIFA. Not a real product. For parody and fair use purposes only.
You don't have to have the faith for a baby, just the faith to build a room.
Yeah, good.
And that was so great to me because it actually made me think, because one of the things that you walk through the sermon and you talk about hinges. And like you said, that hope and disappointment swing on the same hinge. But then you also said, hold on, where was the other? The doors of tomorrow's opportunity hinge on today's obedience. And it made me think about, because you were talking about how she just had this inner compulsion to do something for the prophet. It wasn't like she was trying to get something from him or she wasn't trying to get a baby from him. She just had this inner compulsion. And it made me think back to, because as I was looking over my notes, I was like, all right, so when was a time where I had a small act of obedience that turned into something bigger?
Yeah.
And I was thinking about the time in my life where we had 2 little boys at home, and I had helped obviously the first several years of planting Elevation. I was like really involved and taking notes in every meeting and helping with the children's ministry and the background vocals and everything. And then by the time we had 2 kids, it was like I needed to stay home and take care of our kids. And I felt really left out. Do you remember that?
Oh.
And of course.
I loved it.
And so I remember, as I was thinking through this message, I remember having this feeling of like, I feel left out. I want to do something. I want to be a part. I want to have a bigger role. And I remember God just speaking to me and saying, why don't you just start an e-group? And it was such a small thing. It wasn't a role or a title or a position on our staff. It was the very thing that we were just asking everybody else to do. And so I started this e-group. And what was so special for me was last week, a lot of people know that you have a book coming out. I'm so excited. Do the New You. You can pre-order it. And last week we got to record e-group studies for our entire church. And when you said this, like this small inner compulsion that she had led to something bigger, I was just thinking how I led an e-group in our home for, 8 years. And here I am, 15 years later, and I'm leading an e-group study for our entire church.
Yeah.
And there was so much. I think my favorite thing that you said was, it's a privilege to obey God. You said, God has options. He doesn't need our favors. Mm-hmm. And that just really, it kind of challenged me because it's like, oh, wait, God has options? Mm-hmm. He doesn't need me? I thought God needed me. God doesn't need me. He has so many people. It's a privilege to obey him. But when we do, it's like, it just opens up this door to so many of the things in our life that we thought were dead.
One of the things God has to do is heal our heart and heal our will in order to create space for what he wants to do next. Because, just like in the passage, we're talking about a woman whose womb was unable to produce a child at that point.
Right.
And the Bible gives no detail how many times she had tried. And I don't really want to talk much about this because I think it locates the message too specifically in a physical miracle, which is having a child.
Right.
And that may be the application for somebody. But for most people,
there's so much more to it.
It's kind of like a metaphor for, this woman having given up on something in her life, and how many times in my life that I have given up on something that God wants me to experience, either because, I wasn't patient and waiting for it, or in the process of conjuring up my idea of what God wanted to give me, I just made up my own idea and called it God's will.
Right.
And then sometimes God will come back around at a later point and say, now I'm ready to do that thing that we talked about. And your response will be, it's too late.
Yeah.
Or I've already been down this road.
Yeah. I can't go there.
I want to get real practical because I think for a lot of people, we're knocking, to use my phrase from the thing I said, that God keeps knocking through the no. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people would like to know, well, what does that mean? Well, what I'm trying to get you to see is that God's promise is more persistent than you are.
Wow.
Which means that when God really wants something to happen, God is going to arrange and orchestrate things to make that happen. And in this case of this woman, he moved on her heart in some way that she would build a room for the prophet so that he would be lying there one night, so that he would say, you're going to hold a son, so that the woman would have a son. Even years later, if you keep reading, when the child got sick, God gave a miracle. So that later, this is a whole story that goes all the way to 2 Kings chapter 8. When there was a famine in the land, the lady came back with the son, who was her miracle, in front of the king, and her land was restored. I know I just covered a whole lot
That's
and
didn't
do a good job explaining it. But God is setting some things in motion in your life right now that you may not have the awareness or the context to really recognize as being his providence.
Yeah.
And so when you're standing at a place where you want to quit and give up, and that can mean a lot of different things. There are people who probably don't even want to go on walking with God, don't even want to go on being a Christian anymore.
Yeah.
Don't even want to go on showing up to church, listening to messages like this. There are some people who may be considering walking away from their family, walking away from a job that God gave you because it's harder than you thought it was going to be.
Wow.
Or you're not seen. Or there may be somebody watching who wonders, is my life even worth living? Mm-hmm. And wherever you are on that continuum of quitting, When I say that God is knocking through the no, what I mean by that is that just because it didn't happen in your timeline
Right.
doesn't mean it isn't true. And just because God gave you a delay doesn't mean it was a denial. And that's what I think, if I could go back to versions of myself that wanted to quit and thank myself for not giving up on certain things, because I look at what God has done now. I want everybody who hears this message to see that you're standing in the doorway of a decision that you're making right now, whether to go forward with something, whether to act on something. There is a seed, an idea that God has given you to implement, and you have no idea what you're standing in the doorway of, and that's okay. You can be confused. You can have doubts. What you cannot do and what you must not do is allow the insignificance of your current situation or the frustration of your current circumstance to keep you from doing the next thing God gave you to do, because
Right.
that's all the woman did.
Right.
She built a room.
Right.
She had space on her roof. She converted it to a room. She opened it up to the prophet, and God used that. She didn't believe she could become pregnant. She did become pregnant because she did what she could. So don't let the part that you can't believe keep you from doing the part that you can do. Don't let the part that you can't conceive, the part that you can't understand,
Right.
keep you from the next step that you can take.
Okay, so one of the things that you said is there's a big difference between disappointment and bitterness.
Yeah, that's huge.
So what do you do when you're in that disappointment stage, when you're like, I give up. This is never going to happen for me. This dream, this relationship, whatever, this is never going to happen for me. I give up. How do you keep yourself from becoming bitter? Because you said it's okay to be disappointed. What do you do?
The Bible talks about a root of bitterness that springs up and defiles many. And I've always thought that bitterness sits in the situation, and moving through disappointment leads you to the opportunity to see God converted into something. So what I mean by that is disappointment goes, that person really let me down, and I am very hurt that they let me down, and I may never trust them the same way again because I am very disappointed in them. Bitterness grows roots in that disappointment and says, and you can never trust anyone because everyone will let you down. And the reason that they let you down was because, and then it starts listing all of their reasons that you've made up in your mind. Disappointment is very honest with God, saying, I don't like how this turned out. But the difference to me between a root of bitterness and a moment of disappointment, or even a season of disappointment, is, do you move through it?
So it's about movement.
It's about moving through it. It's about moving through it. I had a friend who had surgery recently, and the doctor was telling them, now I'm going to get you moving sooner than you want to after the surgery, because a stiff joint is a painful joint. And so we're going to have to introduce movement to produce healing quicker than you're going to want to.
That's so good.
And you're going to fight me on it because you're going to think that this is too soon to move.
It hurts.
I think a lot of times God will try to get us moving when it feels too soon for us.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that he doesn't allow us time to recover
Right.
when we go through something, or that God pushes us back out into situations before we're emotionally ready. Sometimes we can get in trouble not allowing him to do the work internally. But there is a type of rehabilitation that your heart goes through with God, and that the Holy Spirit is very good at and very surgical with when you're disappointed, where he can begin to walk you through. And he's done this for me so many times. That's how I know it's real.
Yeah.
What you experienced, what you can learn from it, how you can move forward with the lessons rather than allowing them to fester and become regrets and resentment
Shame.
and shame. But a lot of times it's about moving into the next thing that you do. Not about waiting for God to give you complete clarity of why they walked out of your life, complete clarity of why this failed and you thought it was him, give you complete clarity about how it's all going to work together in his 5-year plan for your life, but moving into the next thing that he gave you to do. So for me, the difference between disappointment and bitterness is, do you move through it? Do you glean from it?
Yeah.
Do you allow that thing to be converted in the hands of God into wisdom that you can take forward into your future?
Yeah. I think also one of the things that you pointed out was doing the next thing that's in front of you, you know, and you've shared this in other sermons before, like do the next best thing. And part of moving isn't always moving in that area of bitterness.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, okay, I feel hurt. I feel blocked in this area, but I see an opportunity that God has given me in this area. So I'm going to move forward. Don't you think that's what she did when you said she went up and made a room on the roof?
That's why you were saying when we were walking over that the sermon is kind of meta, because what I was trying to communicate in my sermon is there is always a place that God can move in your life, right? And in this particular case, we've got a physical situation with a physical woman's womb, and she's becoming pregnant and giving birth to a physical son. And that's connected to a physical room she made on the roof of her house for a prophet.
But they weren't connected.
Well, let me say this.
Okay.
All of those things that I just said physically to me are very symbolic as well.
Okay.
Because her making the room on her roof was not a chess move so she could get a baby.
Right.
And a lot of times when we're playing chess with our life, if I do X, Y, and Z, this will be the result. That's where our bitterness kicks in.
That's like a recipe for disappointment.
It's a recipe for disappointment because I took my kids to piano and they don't even play piano anymore. Or I raised my kids right and they turned out wrong. Or I invested so much in that ministry and that pastor disappointed me.
Right.
Or that group of people ended up leaving and now we don't even have the same friends. Or I went to college and I majored in this and I can't even get a job in it.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is you are playing chess with your life instead of what I think is so important in faith, to leave room for God to do what you didn't even ask him to do, which takes space and time.
This is so
And
good.
the two things that have to be removed from the equation, I heard one guy say that if you remove these two things from the equation, you will never be disappointed again. You ready?
Yeah.
Time and pride.
Wow.
So let's take those two.
Okay.
If you remove time and pride, you won't be disappointed. Time is, God is going to use this, or God is going to produce from this. What I reap, I will sow. But I don't have a specified timeline on how God is going to bring that back around.
Right.
Some of the things that I sowed for in my life, a future generation will see. Some of the things that I sowed for in my lifetime, somebody else that's not even connected to my family will be blessed from. But I still trust God to use it. I remove the element of time. I remove the potential of disappointment because I know that seed is in the ground.
Right.
It's doing what it's supposed to do. I've done what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
I'm peaceful about that. I'm cool with that. I'm content in that. That's the element of time. The element of pride is that I would think that I know how it's supposed to turn out anyway.
Yeah.
That I would think I know the exact purpose and schedule of my life anyway. And this is where I struggle because I am a pragmatic person. You don't lead a ministry like this without factoring in practical factors.
Yeah.
So much of our growth in the ministry has been through me scheduling and
Planning.
creating synergy
Yeah.
with different seasons, and let's launch this here and let's see if we can get this to coalesce with that.
Strategizing.
And let's bring these elements together. And all of that can start to make you feel like, if you're not careful, that my strategy
Yeah.
is producing these supernatural results. And while the strategy has its place, one thing that I've had to learn over and over is that there will be a failure rate on a certain number of things that I try and expect. All of that is part of the process of producing the blessings that we'll see. So to let go of pride in the equation is a little bit more difficult, I think. Time is hard to let go of too. But pride is saying, maybe what I wanted and what God wanted to do aren't the same things. And maybe God has something different in mind. And maybe God is going to work this and use this differently than I intended or expected.
Right.
And you call that pride. That sounds a little harsh, but that's really what it is, because it's me thinking that I know what God should do.
Yeah.
And if I take my pride out of the equation, and if I take time out of the equation,
Me thinking what I should do, what God should do, and when he should do it. Yeah.
If those two things are out of the equation, then I'll still be disappointed, but I won't become bitter, and I can move forward.
Because the disappointment is more of like an impatience, like you're waiting.
The disappointment is impatience, but I don't think disappointment is a sin.
Yeah.
I don't think that you should beat yourself down because you're disappointed. I think that the sin and disappointment comes when you start telling God that because I didn't get what I wanted, I am not going to follow in what you're speaking next.
Right.
I'm going to start withholding pieces of myself from the assignment that you've given me because I was disappointed. And if I'm doing it for God, like the woman was building the room for the prophet, if I'm not doing it for a certain outcome, but I'm doing it for God, then the outcome is in his hands.
Right. I feel like as you're talking, I've had so many moments in my life where I was disappointed, but those moments of disappointment were actually moments that drew me closer to God, because I was in a place where I was like, okay, God, this is not how I thought it would turn out. And like, this is, I thought I did what you told me to do. I thought I was doing everything on the right schedule, and here I am.
Yeah.
But it's almost like I can almost feel, there was this one particular season, and we've had several seasons in our lives where I've felt this way, but I can almost feel myself just like sitting on the couch and just going, this isn't how I thought it was going to be. But I also can feel, like, even as we're talking right now, I can feel the presence of God in that moment. And I think that sometimes it's almost like those disappointing situations are there to sort of draw you into God. Because like you said, pride, if everything went the way that I thought it was supposed to go, I wouldn't even need God in it.
Yeah.
Where's his place?
Yeah. So I feel like that goes back to the idea of disappointment being a door or a dead end.
Ooh.
And that comes to our response. And when it becomes a door is the moment that you allow the thing that you thought was supposed to happen to die.
Yeah.
So something else
Can come
alive.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people would be shocked to hear us talking about disappointment if they followed our journey, because, God has been good to us.
Yeah.
And you and I have nothing to complain about. The way that God has blessed our ministry and our lives and our family, it probably would be shocking for somebody to sit and go, wait, I watch Holly on Instagram. She seems happy. What is she talking about disappointed? Like she has an amazing husband.
True.
That was
good looking.
A joke. That part was for funniness. But and she even has a dog now. And so what are you disappointed about? And what I think we can learn from the woman in 2 Kings 4 is that when it describes her, it says she was well-to-do, and that's referring to her financial status.
Yeah.
But it also has to do with her reputation. And she was a woman that nobody would have really seen as disappointed.
Yeah.
And some of the people that we think, if I could have their life, man, if I could just, if I could be a size 0 like her, if I could wear anything and it looks that good. If my kids acted like that, like there are a million ways that we can do this. And I'm using female examples, but with guys, I think we envy each other's not only personalities, but achievements, accomplishments.
Right.
Maybe even sometimes we envy the way somebody else seems to be able to do something so easily that's so hard for us.
Right.
And if nothing else, I want to encourage you to know that, like, everybody that you admire has an area of their life where if you could see it, if you could see the part of their life that is empty, it's just as painful as your empty place.
Yeah.
And the story of the woman at Shunem is so important because it's not a woman who's destitute like 2 Kings chapter 4, verses 1 through 7,
Right.
where the woman is on the verge of bankruptcy and losing her sons. This woman's default position is, I'm good and I've made peace with the way my life is. And then God disrupts that and gives her something she's given up on. The challenge, Holly, for me to preach a message like this is that there may be things in your life that God says, you know what? I want you to leave that desire now. That was a desire for your life. Like you're 57, your dream of playing in the NFL, you just need to enjoy fantasy football because that's all that this is going to be for you. And you can really, really work hard on your fantasy team, but you're not going to the league, right? We all know that there are some things that we need to go, okay, I didn't grow up, I'm paying a mortgage now. I'm not going to try out for The Voice. That's just healthy self-awareness, right?
That's really funny.
And when I preach this message, I'm terrified that I'm going to get an email from somebody, Pastor Stephen, I'm 79 and I'm going back to college. I always wanted that degree. It's like, no, you don't need the degree. Do an online thing. Here's my point, though. It's not about a certain thing that maybe we would categorize as my dream. It's about a certain place that God wanted to locate inside of her. Uh-huh. And he wanted to locate that inside of her, I think, having more to do with her faith. It wasn't about necessarily the thing. He was trying to express himself to her in a way that would be so tangible, so he gave her a son. And I think it's good for us to keep certain dreams alive and let certain other dreams reincarnate, as we say.
Yeah.
But I think the thing we can never give up on...
I really like that.
What, you're a Buddhist now? Reincarnation?
Maybe so. I like the idea of like how you can have a dream that looks like something different later on.
Well, I definitely believe in creative reincarnation. I've seen it too many times. I've worked on something creatively and it seemed like it failed. Right. And then it came into a song later. It came into a book later. It came into a sermon later.
I've definitely seen that in your life.
It came into a staff teaching later. I apply the same thing to my life. And that's my nothing is wasted mentality, that in my healthiest days, I believe that God is using everything.
Right.
But it is a letting go. And that's the beauty of this text to me. She said, no, I don't believe what you're saying. And then she became pregnant. Mm-hmm. It gets us out of this mindset that says that God is always limited to what we do and what we can conceive and what we can think of. And it helps us realize that God's promise is persistent, that he knocks through the no. He knocks through our no.
Right.
Even when we've stopped knocking.
Yeah.
You know, the Bible says, ask and it'll be given to you, seek and you'll find, knocking the door will be open to you. For everyone who seeks finds, everyone who asks is given, and everyone who knocks, the door will be open. Sometimes, and then there's this moment where we see a woman and she's not knocking on the door asking God for a baby anymore. Right. And then God knocks.
Yeah.
And I love that picture of God for my life, that he's still trying to find ways to use me. He's still trying to find ways to accomplish his purpose through my life. Not so much about what I can get from him, but that he still has something for me to do, that he still has relevance down the road ahead of me, that he still has significance for the words that I'll speak, for the ways that I can love my family, for the ways that I can use the gift that I have to glorify him. Yeah. That he's not done with me. And that would be the simplicity of this message, is that God is so committed to his purpose that he will knock through every no. And picture this wrecking ball of God's grace, this wrecking ball of God's purpose, just knocking down the walls you've put up and just coming through anyway and going, no, I'm not going to accept your resentment. I'm not going to accept your bitterness. I'm doing a new thing in your life. And if people can take that away from this message and this woman from Shunem, I think it'd be life-changing.
It is life-changing. And thank you for how much, I don't know where all that came from, but thank you for sharing it with us.
Thanks for talking about it with me.
Okay, I have another question for you. Any hints on what's coming this week?
No. Knock through the no.
When I'm going to keep knocking.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching Elevation Plus. We consider you part of our EFAM, which is our online family.
That's right. So make sure you are liking, subscribing, sharing Elevation Plus, and come back here so you can find out more about great stories, great creative elements, and also join us every week for Coffee Fam.
That's right.